Like, it took me back to being a kid, listening to the music that my mom would play, whether it was Fela, King Sunny Ade, who really just were pioneers of the Nigerian Afrobeat style.
I'm glad you liked it, because sometimes we've talked about it before. Like, we watch a movie and someone was doing an African accent, and like it sounds perfectly fine to me because I'm not familiar with it like that. But then you're just like, man, that's terrible. That's a terrible accent. So like, I'm listening to the song and I'm like, you can't stop me, oh. And I'm like, I'm enjoying it, and I'm just like, I wonder, because I'm not a person that's.
Let me put you on game.
And we're going to move on to our second review, which is going to be the Little Simz album, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. If you're not familiar with Little Simz, she is a UK rap artist by way of Nigeria as well. She has some Nigerian roots. And this is her fourth album, I want to say. So she's been in the game for a while. She's not necessarily a huge name, but, in my opinion, I think she is a huge talent. I think she has a lot to offer. So this is her latest offering with her new album. So what are your impressions of the album? How are you feeling about it?
This album really goes for it. It goes for it all. It doesn't hold any punches, and she really puts herself out there, despite the fact that she's an introvert. And to me, it was a fascinating and incredibly creative and artistic project that really honed in on a lot of classic hip hop vibes from the late 90s, a very neo soul, Tribe Called Quest-esque kind of atmosphere that she created, with a lot of new infusion and experimental stuff that she tried. And the only critique I really had on the project was that I think sometimes her voice and her vocal delivery can become a little distracting, especially not in and of itself, but as an American listening to a Brit, sometimes their voice and their accent kind of throws me off on the track, and their pronunciations, and that can be a bit distracting. This is just kind of a personal pet peeve.
It's just a personal thing. I'm about to say she can't help it.
and I felt bad.
Rapping
I was
an
like,
American accent.
Like, yeah, if you could just switch that language and talk more like this, it might be. But anyway, once I was able to get past that and not really think about it, I think that she does a lot of really incredible stuff on this project. And she has some songs here that is definitely going to make my top songs of the year. So how about you?
Yeah, it's I just want to say, we've reviewed some pretty big artists over the last couple of weeks. We've reviewed Baby Keem, who has a large following. We've reviewed Kanye West, who is a meme at this point and a household name. And Drake is also another household name. And these men sell millions and millions of records and have this incredible level of popularity. So it's very surprising to me, and a little damning in a way of the music industry, I think, that Little Simz has the best album of the four, easily. Like, and she's the least popular, which is crazy to me to consider it, but I don't think it's close. I think she has the best body of work of all four. This is a really ambitious, this is a really incredible album. It takes a lot of risks. There's a lot of deep dives into her emotions and her family history. She takes a lot of different journeys in terms of the sound. She does multiple different genres on this album, especially towards the latter half. It's incredible, honestly. I think it's a really great album. It's one of my favorites that came out this year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now I can't wait to get into this breakdown. I mean, before we even get to the track by track breakdown, the length of the album is kind of bolstered by some of these interludes, but these interludes do a really good job of just they're almost like interlude skits in a way, where some of it is very overt messaging, sometimes to the audience, sometimes to herself. And at other times kind of takes you into this kind of fantastical world, like a looking through the looking glass kind of thing, or
Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, those kind of vibes. It was really cool and just quirky, but it worked.
Yeah, it did. And it does a good job of dividing. There's different like sonic sections of the album. And it does a good job of dividing those up into like these digestible pieces. So yeah, and the musicality on the album, especially on the interludes, but the way she mixes like the string sections and the choirs, and like it's the musicality outside of just the fact that she's a rapper. Like the musicality of the album is great. But let's get into it. Introvert. We talked about Baby Keem having a strong opening. Like, this is an even stronger opening. Like, the production on this is epic. I don't think there's really any other way to describe it. And I think she has such a great ability to carry songs lyrically. Like she said something, like even like where she said something so simple, like You know, sometimes I feel like I'm a wordsmith, and other times I feel like I'm worthless. Like just the way that she intermixes her words, I think is great. I think she's one of the better rappers out right now, and I think she shows it on that intro.
Yeah, and what's funny is that she delivered a bar that was a straight definition, but I almost thought it was wordplay because of how it sounded when she said, "I study humans, so I'm an anthropologist," and I was like, that's literally the definition of anthropology. But like it was so clever, and I've never heard a rapper use the term anthropologist, and she just throws out certain words that I don't hear other rappers use, which is such a breath of fresh air, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely a really strong opener.
Yeah.
And then we get into Woman featuring Cleo Soul. Yeah, I love her transitions a lot of times. She goes really in these crazy directions, from going from such an epic like banger basically into going to a really soft song. I love how she celebrates all different kinds of women on the track, and I think it just really works and shows her diversity.
Yeah. To me, it was like a remake of Girls, Girls, Girls by Jay-Z that
But
wasn't
better, because I hate
misogynistic.
Girls, Girls, Girls. It's such a terrible song.
Exactly.
Oh man,
It's
classic
like
album, but terrible song.
it is. And to me, it shows the other side of that, where instead of it being misogynistic and braggadocious, it's celebratory of the success and the exploits of women and of all the things that they're able to, that women do, and just really bigs up them in a way that isn't often seen in music. Rarely, how often do people talk about how good women cook? And she like espouses it in a very meaningful way, and I love that she has a
Yeah.
bar celebrating women who are moguls, who are um, getting into different industries, as well as being housewives, and just showing that in whatever realm they're in, they're doing their thing and they're running the show.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and then she launches into Two Worlds Apart. I love her use of samples on this album is excellent. I love the Smokey Robinson sample. I love the way it's chopped up and the way that it progresses and the way that she's rapping on the song. Like it's just it's so good, man. It's so tough to describe how good the album is, but I think that's one of the songs that kind of exemplifies it for sure.
Yeah.
And I love how the sample, like, it starts one way, and as the song progresses and she's launching into her storytelling, which is also another really great aspect of the album, the sample progresses and it elongates and becomes more fully formed. And that's kind of how the progression of the song goes. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it pays homage to kind of the golden age of hip hop, like I said, for me at least, and she's on some tribe neo soul vibes that she creates with the sound of this project, and because it takes those, takes a Smokey Robinson sample from the '70s, which is all they did back then, and remixes it into a really interesting hook that captures the listener's attention. And big shout outs to the production inflow. He's, I think, credited for production for the entire project, and like all the work that he does in this project is incredible. So I think more people need to get some songs from him, because he's doing his thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How'd you feel about I Love You, I Hate You?
That song it's incredible, dude. Like we talked about using samples, but I love when artists like stop or don't finish their lines and they let the sample finish it, and they interweave the sample into how they're telling their story or how their verses are, the subject matter of their verses. Because a lot of times samples have absolutely nothing to do with what the song is about. It could be a song about like loving your wife, and a rapper will turn into a song about lean. But like she actually uses the song, at least that interpolation, to actually tell a really heartbreaking story about someone who has a uneven relationship with their parents, and how often she feels these two really strong conflicting emotions, and how I thought it was really beautiful how she launched into how she analyzed how she felt about her parents, and then she looked at herself and she thought about how her parents are human, and maybe if she looked at them that way, it would make it easier for her to forgive them or to understand where they were coming from, which is a really mature way to look at it. But also it's intermixed with her feelings of love and of her feelings of hate. So I thought it was a really good deep dive into her emotions and into her history, which is something that we've missed a lot on some of the albums that we've reviewed before. I think some of the albums were kind of missing that real raw emotion that we look for in hip hop tracks. So that was, I think, is one of my favorite songs of the year, but definitely one of my favorite songs on the album.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I really echo a lot of those sentiments. And it was a song basically dedicated to all the kids who are hurting from absentee fathers, which is a lot of the world, unfortunately. And I feel like an artist like Jay-Z would cry after listening to this song, because listening to his music, he constantly references his dad and that broken relationship, and just wanting his attention ultimately, and it was just a great song. I can't really say much more else besides what you said. I think you did a great job of breaking down, and it has a powerful message in the end of it, and as well as a clear message to that therapy is okay, because I feel like you can't become this self-aware with just being in your own head. And I feel like therapy can unlock some of the doors that she's unlocked with this, because a lot of people get into that binary thinking of, oh, I love my parent, they were there for me, or I hate my parents, they weren't there for me. But there's an in-between, because as a kid, you don't know how badly you're being messed up by your parents sometimes, and you don't unlock those keys to break it down until you become an adult. And for some people, it takes really a long process, a long time before they can understand that process. And this leg of the album really leans on the parental guidance and misguidance of the youth theme, especially going into the Little Q Part 1 interview, where I love the beat on that, as well as the little prayer that Kudus, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, goes to. And then following that up with Little Q Part 2, and me discovering that she's actually rapping in terms of his perspective and telling this whole story from his perspective, where he talks about violence in the UK as a youth and as a Black youth. And I love the chorus with Annie and that vibe that they created, and just the amazing, I feel like some of our favorite artists have taken the ability of storytelling and transformed it by rapping in someone else's perspective, which is really hard. And she does that masterfully in this song. And she kind of carries on that tradition that I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very intriguing way to tell a story by putting yourself in someone else's shoes, especially like how heartbreaking it is with the coma and the stabbing, and like just the level of dire circumstances that he was dealing with. I love how they use the children's choir basically to tell a coming of age story, which I think is, again, like, we talked about it on some previous songs, but a really creative use of a sample, So yeah, just exemplary song, exemplary story. You put it really well. Then we launch into a couple songs that are kind of my favorite version of Simz, because she can get deep and she can get very, like you said, neo soulish, but like when she wants to put on like a hard, industrial type beat and just rap, like she's dope, she's dope at that too. So you have a song like Speed, which is really great. I love her confidence and her bravado. And then you got Standing Ovation, which is a great beat and some of her best verses. I love when women rappers get on their, their confidence-ish, and they start talking about how, like, she's talking about how she wants the respect and she wants the level of adoration that she deserves based on her talent. And yeah, it's just, it's refreshing to hear that from Simz for sure. She's dope in this section of the album, especially.
Yeah, and then you add to that, I love it when rappers don't just have throwaway meanings for their songs. At the end of the song, she literally gives a standing ovation to all those individuals, like she said, the doulas, the teachers, the spiritual healers, the holistic, folks, protesters, this, that, and the third. And when you think about that in context of the title of the song, Standing Ovation, like she's trying to give those people their respect, because they often go as being overlooked and as being kind of woo-woo in some circles, but they do deserve a lot of respect for keeping up with a lot of traditions that some people frown upon, but others really benefit from, and the culture benefits from having people that are looking after their own people in kind of fields that just kind of go on as being unnoticed in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's so much to unpack on this album. Definitely. It definitely lends itself to repeat listens for sure. I See You is another cool love song. I think she does that well. A very intimate change up from the rest of the album. And you have the Rapper That Came to Tea interlude, like we talked about, that launches you into a different space, but also signifies another step into a different direction for the album. And you got Rolling Stone. Her energy on this is crazy. She's bragging, like her lyrics on this, the melodies. Like I love how smooth the second half gets, and she's into that like little whisper, while also just talking about like abandonment, essentially. But yeah, it's just another example of her just having a level of diversity that isn't really present in a lot of music today. But what did you think about that, Roy?
Oh man, bro, like first the Gems interlude really gets you into this mystical world from this half of the album, and then you have the Rapper That Came to Tea interlude, which was dope. And just you kind of get a deep dive into her mindset and her really processing her introversion in a very artistic way. And it was funny, like listening to this album, I kept thinking to myself, I wonder how Jared feels about this. I wonder if he has any like, kindred spirit feelings with Little Simz in terms of what she talks about and if he kind of relates. But going into like Rolling Stone, I'm like, oh, she's snapping now. Like if you didn't think she was snapping before, she is on the beat. Her delivery is sharp and she is giving you everything that you could really want. And I really enjoyed this leg of the album.
Yeah, I think I did definitely identify with it because I think she puts being an introvert in a really interesting way. Like I think that when you see people talking about being an introvert online, it comes from a very like a place that's just very pretentious. Like it's like I'm too good to associate with other people. But like no, she's basically just saying that it's something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis that holds me back from pursuing things the way that I want to pursue them. But she's also very conscious of other people and how they affect her, and maybe she doesn't necessarily want to associate or deal with that, which is kind of where she launches into with Protect My Energy. She shows her diversity again. I love how many different genres are here. This is a very like NERD internet style song where she's really just getting into a groove, and her singing, it really works on the song as well. But yeah, this song basically starts a run for me that I think is one of my favorites on the album. I think when she gets into the rhythmic section of it, I think it really works. What about you?
Yeah, Protect My Energy. It was like the departure from the previous sounds on the album, and I've never heard a pop song celebrating introversion. So it was kind of paradoxical in a sense, because I could see people dancing to this song in a club, but like everybody social distance apart, like just jamming because they're all
protecting their energy.
And then you transition into like Never Make Promises, which is another interlude that in some ways can kind of take away from the what I'll say, the
like the flow.
Yeah, the flow of the album, because some of these songs are really dope, but then you have interludes that like kind of cut that off. But sometimes I guess it's also nice to have a little break, and maybe she structured it in a way so that it could work with the sections of the song. But yeah, then you get into, I think, my favorite song of the album, Point and Kill.
I was very curious as to what you thought about that. Yeah,
bruh, this song and Fear No Man, oh my god, like, it took me back to being a kid listening to the music that my mom would play, whether it was Fela, King Sunny Ade, and some other artists of her generation who really just were pioneers of the Nigerian Afrobeat style that is now being kind of ran with nowadays, but back then was kind of obscure and not really celebrated as much. And it just made me so happy for my heritage to know that an artist of my generation, because we were all born around the same year, is now making music that I really identify and I feel such a connection to, that brings me back to, kind of the motherland. Ogbon Jayar is straight fire. His voice is great, and I'm going to be listening to his projects now because I haven't heard him from before this. And they have such a great use of like kind of a Fela Kuti cadence and the energy with the pigeon flow that she added to, speaking in like, kind of a Nigerian slang. I need more and more of this.
Yeah. I'm glad you liked it, because sometimes like we've talked about it before, like where we watch a movie and someone was doing an African accent, and like it sounds perfectly fine to me because I'm not familiar with it like that, but then you're just like, man, that's terrible, that's a terrible accent. So like I'm listening to the song and I'm like, you can't stop me, oh, and I'm like I'm enjoying it, and I'm just like, I wonder, because I'm not a person that's really like tapped into Afrobeats like that. I've always liked every Afrobeat song I've heard, I just never like really dived in like that. But like I'm just like, I wonder, like, I hope this isn't like entry level Afrobeats. I hope like Seji really likes this, because I like it. I think this is great. But yeah, I'm glad that you really like, because sometimes like, especially with someone that is, like we say, we're Americanized, she's probably like Englishized or whatever you want to say. So for her to dive back into her roots, like that could work or it could not work. So like I didn't know how you would feel about it, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it as much as you did, because I think this is one of my favorite sections on the album for sure. Between that and Fear No Man, yeah.
Yeah, like, Points and Kill, that's a song that I could see my mom dancing to show you like it directly connects to our roots, and it'll be a beat that she's familiar with and a sound and an aesthetic that she's familiar with. And so that's why I'm like, yes, this is something that I fully embrace and that I fully enjoyed. And then, getting into Fear No Man, she basically rides off the momentum of Points and Kill. And again, it just brought me back to my childhood and just those influences and the bars. Her bars in this song in particular just ooze confidence, bro. Like,
Yeah.
and it from the seams of the track, it's just like fully confident, fully embracing who she is. And I love that. You know, I love her grand statement from the title of this album to this track in particular. And again, yeah, one of my favorite stretches of the project.
Yeah, for sure. You should play it for moms and see
Oh, yeah.
see what her reaction is.
Yeah.
Yeah, then we get into the garden interlude as well, which is a beautiful chorus. I love the chorus on that. How did you get here? Another one of my favorites, you know, especially as someone who's an artist. It's tough to kind of try to break the mold or divert from the path that's expected from you, especially like, you know, it doesn't make it easy. So to hear her journey and how hard it was for her and how she kept pushing, like it's a song that I think I can listen to and go back to like when I'm struggling with my own journey and like tap into that and really inspire myself, because the verses themselves are really inspiring. And she's talking about coming up and chasing her dreams. It's just another example of her with a great storytelling. The use of the background vocals is great. It's just a really feel good, inspiring song for anyone that's chasing anything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I really felt the same. And I think that between this song as well as Misunderstood, it's a really good end to this project because she just really reiterates some of the same themes that she spoke about and throughout the entire album, but she just gets back to her hip hop rap roots. Great song, great beats, solid lyrical flow, and even wordplay with the title, Misunderstood. Like it's, you know, double entendre, and I'm all for that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, truly enjoyable project. I'm looking forward to seeing what she does next. You got 4 favorite songs?
Yeah, easy. Rolling Stone, Protect My Energy, Point and Kill, and Feel No Man.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Point and Kill and Fear No Man as well. And I'll go Introvert and I Love You, I Hate You.
Great songs.
So again, if you had to recommend this to our listeners, because we out here, what would you say? Like, what would be the strength of your recommendation? How excited would you be to recommend this to someone on a scale of 1 to 5?
On a scale of 1 to 5, I'm gonna say a 5. I think this is a must listen. I think that there's songs on this album that I would readily give to a lot of different people who want to kind of maybe take a maybe dip their toe into what an Afrobeat sound could sound like, what a UK artist could sound like, what neo soul and understanding what the influences of rap sound like. I think she encapsulates and does so much in this project that it is worth it for anybody to listen, especially because unfortunately it's just not getting enough traction. So I think this is an album that needs to that people need to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I think that this is incredible. It's an amazing album, and I'm gonna have to echo your sentiments and give it a 5 as well. It's a must listen. So that means that this is our first put you on game stamp of approval. Stamp it, write it down, mail it, whatever you got to do. Because yes, this is excellent. If you're listening and you're looking for an album to get you through the summer to fall transition, or just an album to listen to dive into, to dissect, or even just to jam to, because she got jams on here too, I would go a step past highly recommend and say that for sure. It is definitely a must listen. She's dope.
Yeah.
It's an awesome album. Unquestionably one of the best albums of the year.
Yeah, bottom line, man. I'm glad that you put me onto this and that we could, you know, relay this to the people, let them know how good it is.
Yeah, for sure. She deserves the clout. You know, like we talked, like I mentioned earlier, there's been some really huge releases the last couple of weeks, and a lot of them things been despite how large the name is. These dudes got hundreds of millions of streams, and the albums were good at best. So, you know, I'm glad we have a platform to be able to take an artist that may not have the ears of everyone over here, especially in the US. I'm sure she has a bigger audience in the UK, but to take an artist like that and just say like, yo, like she's worth a listen. So give it your ear. She deserves it.
Yeah.